I want to start with what is happening in the Red Sea. Finally, you see Yemen comes out and put a blockade on Saudi Arabia. Reuters reported that the new blockade on Saudi Arabia would put a lot of pressure on the global economy. But they're basically saying that the from Saudi Arabia to Asia will, the oil exports from Saudi Arabia to Asia will reduce global oil supplies by 7%, leading to a catastrophic, to a catastrophe. And considering the economy and the crisis that could bring, that could put pressure on the global market, because right now we have two cases. The Strait is not working because of the war, and the blockade on Yemen is putting pressure. And I assume some of these oil tankers were going to Japan and South Korea to reduce the pressure on these two allies of the United States. But getting back to what Yemen is doing right now, what is your understanding of the timing of what has happened?
Well, I guess the Saudi blockade has continued for aviation, so the Houthis said, fine, we're going to put pressure. And I suspect it's coordinated with Iran, because yesterday Iran hit a tanker, a Saudi tanker, that was trying to get through the Strait of Hormuz through the Omani lane. So this now puts the spotlight on Pakistan. Is Pakistan going to follow through on its mutual security agreement or not? If they don't, I think it's going to be one further sign that the Pakistanis aren't really keen on getting in the midst of a war with Iran and Saudi Arabia and the Houthis.
Usually the military pact is about when you're attacked. But if you put a blockade on a country and that country going to retaliate, is that going to come to the military pact between the two countries?
Well, it could. You're right. I mean, you can make the case that this shouldn't, but again, you never, don't try to be too illogical with this stuff. Some of it's more just emotional, personal.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia, how do you see the reaction from Saudi Arabia? How are they going to react?
I don't know. We'll see. That's what I'm waiting to see what they're going to do. Are they going to try to ramp this up? Or are they going to try to, back it down? I personally expect they're going to try to back down, that they don't want to escalate this. But, because if they escalate it, then they run the real risk of losing Yanbu to ballistic missiles fired out of from the Houthis or out of Yemen. So I think they're going to try to. I presume they'll try to back down and get this quieted, because they need that cash that's flowing in through Yanbu.
It means that they're going to somehow. It's going to be humiliating if they decide to come out and say, "Oh, we're going to remove the siege on Yemen." Yeah. What would be the position of Washington, the way maybe Donald Trump would advocate for, somehow what would be the understanding in Washington in order to do something with this case, with the problem that they're facing, Saudi Arabia is facing? What would be the position in Washington?
Well, I think there
would be
Washington
confrontation.
In what way? What do you mean? Sending like an aircraft carrier strike group there to confront the Houthis?
Yeah. Because you said don't follow the logic. If you don't follow the logic, the logic of Donald Trump is to fight back. It's not just backing up.
Yeah, they've already, remember, the United States has already tried that and failed. They tried that started in, I think it started in the middle of March, went for 7 weeks, ended in May, and then the United States declared victory and left. They got the hell out of there, simply because they couldn't defeat the Houthis. So no, I don't see the United States trying to get back in militarily right now. They're stretched thin as it is.
To be honest, I don't know what does it mean to defeat Houthis militarily, and it's
Well,
somehow
what it would mean,
impossible for it.
what well, what it would mean is you eliminate their ability to fire any missiles or launch any attacks on any ships transiting Bab el Mandab. Now, they tried to do that in the past and it failed. So that would be the practical, uh, you know, thing you're trying to stop.
Yeah. Here comes the question of the geography of Yemen. You remember the difficulties of the United States to hit the targets. They were running out of targets when they decided to defeat Yemen, to defeat
Yeah.
Ansarullah. The problem would be the same if someone decides to do something against Yemen.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, Yemen's already proved they can withstand U.S. attacks by U.S. aircraft carriers and by Israel's Air Force at the same time. So, they're not afraid. They're not intimidated at all by this.
Don't know how long did Larry, how long does it take to see the repercussions of the Red Sea in the oil market usually?
I'd say 30 days,
Mm.
because remember, ships that are already in this Red Sea but sailing up through this Suez Canal that are carrying oil. That oil, it'll be another 30 days, perhaps, before it gets to its final destination, maybe less.
The the move on the part of Yemen, you mentioned maybe behind the scene there is some sort of coordination between the elements of the axis of resistance, or do you think that how is that going to influence the American position with the war against Iran? How is that going to influence the situation in the Red Sea? How is that going to how do the blockade in the Red Sea, the blockade on Saudi
Well,
Arabia, going to influence the war between the United States and Iran?
so yeah, it could force the United States to stretch its assets even further
Mm.
than what they already have. So, particularly if the Saudis say, "Hey, we need your help. We got to get the Strait of Hormuz open." Then there's the United States back in the Red Sea. So that means another carrier strike group that would have to be deployed. But I said if they need that open, they're not going to get a carrier strike group in the next week or two. So then they might have to peel off one that's currently off the coast of Iran, which reduces the combat air power. Yeah, no, this definitely will complicate U.S. Responses and retaliation.
Because the siege, if I'm not mistaken, is the American, Saudi, and UAE all together. The siege, these three countries are somehow cooperating to enforce the siege on Yemen. Yeah.
I think so.
So the question is why Saudi Arabia is reacting to that.
But what is the cooperation? Define the cooperation. What are they actually doing apart from talking?
Yeah.
I mean, are they doing anything measurable? Moving troops, moving ships, launching airstrikes. Are they doing any of that? So far, no.
The region is so divided right now that you don't see any comment from UAE, for example, which was the partner of Saudi Arabia with that siege in Yemen. They didn't comment on that. No comments from them, no comments so far from the United States. I assume that there are phone calls between the United States and Saudi Arabia.
Yes, I would assume so.
Yeah. And the war, the new round of war has started at 4 p.m. Eastern time, Larry. And they're attacking the southern part of Iran.
Yeah,
There's two sides. Go ahead.
And Iran is attacking Kuwait and Bahrain, and will be attacking Jordan and any any other state that's involved with attacking Iran. And you saw that there's basically been a tacit admission that there's been over 100 casualties in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. New York Times reported that. He said that the casualties are somehow 100. CBS News reported that. And these numbers that are growing, and they're growing bigger. And how do you see the repercussions in the United States? Did you see the two photos, these two forces that were killed? Today I saw them. They were so young. The lady was 19-year-old. It's unbelievable. It's a kid.
Apparently the missile hit the housing complex there at the base. But, it wasn't just CBS reporting this. It was the Pentagon press secretary says almost 100 service members were determined to have sustained injuries, basically wounded since July 7th. So it's not just CBS. It is the, Pete Hegseth's own department confirming it.
Trump today tweeted, Larry, that he said that, let me just bring his tweet here. He says, for every American force, he's going to retaliate. And every time Iran kills an American soldier, they will pay for that killing many times over. This directive has been passed on to the Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff Daniel Kaine, and every leader in the military. There are two sides of the situation right now. One of them is the escalations, and it seems to me that in the coming days we're going to have devastating escalations between the two sides, as everything is somehow heating up.
Well, remember, Iran threatened last week that if the United States continued attacking, it shut down the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, they'd review their nuclear security doctrine, and they would withdraw from the NPT. All right, let's check one of those boxes. They've now, they've now closed this Bab el-Mandab. Now let's see what they do on the nuclear side. Do they follow through with, reviewing their nuclear doctrine and then also withdrawing from the NPT? We'll see what, will that happen this week?
They attacked the nuclear power plant in Darkhun in the western part of it, in the province of Khuzestan. And just 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, it was reported that the air defense systems close to the nuclear power plant in Bushehr are activated. It seems that there are some attacks. They're trying to hit some targets in the nuclear power plant. The problem for Iran is that there is no nuclear power plant in these GCC countries. I don't know what would be the retaliation, Iranian retaliation.
There is only one. It's in the UAE.
So that's why I think the UAE was somehow panicking. It's saying, we have to put an end to this war. This escalation is not going to serve us. We have to do something about it.
Right. I think that's a good guess. Yeah, because they're very vulnerable.
Do you see the war getting to Israel?
Yes. Yeah. If the United States keeps with basing its KC-135 air refuelers, and then on top of that, F-16 fighters, Israel is going to get hit. They're just making themselves into a big fat target.
Yeah. There are so many looking at the war so far, and so many innocent people were killed.
Mhm.
And you look at the situation in Iran, you look at the pictures, you look at on the other hand, these two soldiers, these two forces that were killed. You see these people, Larry, just on the part of to understand the logic of these politicians. They don't care about these ordinary people being killed or somehow. These people are so much. It's unbelievable for me to
Yeah,
understand their mindset.
they're a little callous. They don't take a real interest in those people, and I think the people sense it.
IRGC, Larry, today they announced in a statement, they said that Iran is using the intelligence and the information they're getting from the Jordanian people and the armed forces of Jordan. They're giving the intelligence to the Iranians to hit the targets in Jordan. And if that's the case, that could be hugely problematic for the United
Yeah.
States staying in Jordan.
Well, I think the U.S. is ultimately be compelled to leave Jordan just because of the various missile strikes and the lack of any effective air defense.
Yeah. When you are in a country that the leadership agrees with you, but the people don't agree, don't necessarily accept your presence in their country.
Right.
This is the way that it works. Then you have to move to Israel.
Right.
Yeah. And the aircraft carrier, two parts. How do you see as the situation is getting, somehow critical in Jordan? What would be the next move? It's going to be the aircraft carriers. They're using the aircraft carriers, getting closer maybe to the Iranian borders and using all these fighter jets taking off from the aircraft carriers and refueling tankers. How about those? Because these are two important components of the attacks.
Yeah. Again, it depends where it's going to originate from. I don't think they'll try to come from both directions, but they could. The ships, actually, the aircraft off the ships to the south probably wouldn't attempt it because flying that far across Iran means they'd have to get air refueled over Iran, and Iran would shoot them down. So I don't think that's feasible.
Are they going to consider going inside Iranian airspace?
I doubt it.
Because that would be they want to target again those cities like Tehran and the cities to the eastern part of Iran. They have to invade the Iranian airspace. Without that, the attacks, they cannot hit the target.
Right. Yeah. No, I think if you look at when they launch from an aircraft carrier, let's say south, 200 miles off of Chabahar. Well, they have to get refueled right there at the border. And how far is it from Chabahar to, say, Tehran?
Yeah, from Chabahar to Tehran.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I cannot say. I don't know. Let me just check it. Yeah, it's gonna be. Let me just check it out here. Yeah, it's gonna be 1,800 kilometers.
Okay, so this is about 900 miles, right?
Yeah.
Um, so even the F-35s can't reach that far. They'd have to fire a Tomahawk missile, and the Tomahawk missile or JASSM missile would go, maybe a couple hundred miles, and then so it's difficult. The best way to get it to Tehran would be not from the south, but from the north. from Armenia or Azerbaijan.
But that needs these two countries cooperating with the United States. They're going to make themselves.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
It means that they're going to be the target of the Iranian army, Iranian Air Force, or Iranian missiles and drones if they put themselves in that position.
Well, yeah. So
I
don't see him doing that.
no. Do you see any scenario under which the Trump administration would send these fighter jets or refueling tankers to Turkey or Azerbaijan? Or maybe Armenia?
Yeah. No, I could see him sending him to Turkey just for protection. If they start basing combat aircraft that are carrying out strikes inside Iran and Armenia or Azerbaijan, Russia will hit them too.
Why?
Actually, Russia, I mean, Iran will hit them too. I was thinking, with Russia up north, but Iran can, Armenia is so small comparatively, and even Azerbaijan's only 10 million people. So, yeah, Iran would hit them too. And I'm sure they would have what I meant was they would coordinated that with Russia.
How is the communication between Russia and Iran when it comes to Armenia and Azerbaijan?
I'm sure it's been a topic of discussion between Arachi and Sergei Lavrov and Pezeshkian and Putin. Yeah, I'm sure it's been discussed. I don't think they're ignoring it.
Azerbaijan is so involved in Ukraine. And we know the tensions between the two. But Armenia is not that much involved, in Ukraine, but they're somehow cooperating with the United States. This is tricky for Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, they're mostly involved in Ukraine, and I don't know what would be their reaction to the United States using Armenia and Azerbaijan. Air France, they have reported today that they're gonna suspend the flights from France to Riyadh to Saudi Arabia until 25. It's going to be for 5 days. But for Dubai, their suspension is going to be the suspension of flights is going to be until July 28th. It basically in the next 7 days, the escalation is going to happen, it seems.
Well, I mean, what do you call what's going on right now? I'd call that escalation. So the U.S. is conducting more bombing strikes, and Iran is not waiting. They're already launching reciprocal strikes on Kuwait and Bahrain. I don't know if they've hit Qatar yet.
They were attacking Bahrain and Kuwait nonstop today, and I was wondering if there are any HIMARS still there to be used against Iran.
No, well, not HIMARS, ATACMS or PRISMs, PRSMs, and the answer is no.
So basically,
they basically exhausted what they had.
So when the head of Iranian parliament today said that the United States is bringing a lot of weapons to the region, on the other hand, they're somehow trying to send messages to Iranians. And we're not going to be deceived by this attitude because they have been experiencing that before.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The West just doesn't understand Iran. They think all we got to do is put economic pressure on them, put some political pressure, military pressure, and okay, they'll give up. So no, they're not. Well, these, the IRGC is pretty intense, and they're not going to run away. So no, I think the United States is, ultimately at some point have to come to the realization we cannot defeat Iran. There's, to try to do so would be too costly because you'd have to land troops on the ground. The U.S. isn't going to do that. If they do that, I don't imagine it's going to drag on for months. And they do that, those troops would be immediately targeted.